Hi, Dr. Dave. It's great to
Hey, Carrie, how
see
are
you.
you? It's great to do this with you.
You too. So there is something that comes up a lot in my classes with students, and I wanted to run it by you and get some of your thoughts around it. But the word that keeps coming up is imposter syndrome. And I get it because I've been there. Who am I to be a life coach? Who am I to be a business coach? Who am I is the main question over and over again. Who am I to tell someone about their life when I don't have my life in order or my life is a work in progress? Who am I to tell someone about their business when my business is still a work in progress? I feel like it's something that is very common among new coaches because they care, they want to help. But I wanted to see what your thoughts were on imposter syndrome.
Okay, now I wouldn't be a proper mentor coach if I answered that instead of offered a question. So my
Okay.
question to you, do you remember, I know you're an accomplished equestrian, do you remember the first time that you got on a horse and what you experienced? Or even the first time you coached an official client as a coach?
Yes, I call it the messy middle. So I call it the messy middle. And the reason is because I've had to learn to embrace the messiness when it's not pretty, when it might be a little ugly. On my horse specifically, if I'm learning something new, I had to reframe the messy middle when it feels very discombobulated, like I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I just want to throw in the reins, no pun intended, and give up completely. I have to remind myself that there's growth around the corner. That's actually a clue that I'm onto something. There's going to be a breakthrough movement forward just around the corner if I can stay with that uncomfortableness of not knowing. It's just uncomfortable. It's new. It's different.
That's huge. And I want to highlight both of those, uncomfortable and keep going, because there's not a single thing that any of us has ever done or any client with any coach who's viewing this that a new experience does not begin with some uncertainty or trepidation or anxiety. And what you described is framing that as challenge, as opportunity to proceed, knowing that it's a way station in a process. That's a valuable framing. That's what we help our clients do, instead of reading that anxiety or uncertainty as danger, better head for cover, go back to what you're familiar with and stop. So the framing will render it unavailable or as an imposter, I can't do this, or as a step to what's next. So instead of stopping with a label like imposter or stopping with another label like procrastinator, it's a step to move ahead. The framing determines how we proceed, because there's always, for every one of us, every time we do something new, the pull of the old and the fear of the new. So what you said, I think, is huge in terms of what we do as coaches.
I agree. And the other part of this that relates to coaching is presence, in my opinion. Being truly present in the moment and being able to embrace the process and not being 100% outcome focused. I think sometimes if we're too outcome focused, I can relate this to my riding horses. It takes me out of the present moment. And then I'm not really listening and responding to my best ability in the moment because I'm too worried about how this is going to look or how this is going to turn out or how this is going to end up.
Exactly. And that's exactly where we operate as coaches, is in the present moment and looking at the choice architecture of the decisions here and now and what's next, the next step and the map forward, instead of stopping and concluding something that makes that stopping make sense, because we can always make it make sense. And imposter syndrome is something that's kind of a self-diagnosis that makes it make sense. So it's a done deal. So the anxiety is alleviated, even though you don't feel good about it, you're off the hook. So An experience of being an imposter versus the experience of mastery has the same origin in the present moment. And looking forward is framing the opportunity, what's next, and the kind of way that we help someone to create change is to begin to create a system, because with a system, it's a map, and we know then what's the next step, where we're going, and then what to focus on in that process.
I like everything that you were talking about, especially the piece about moving from imposter to master. Imposter to master, if we can embrace that reframe. And I'm wondering if there's some tips and tools that are available to really embrace that mindset of moving from imposter to master.
Well, it's an immediate focus on a framework of how we view something, whether we view anxiety as danger or as excitement, and then look for the next step to move ahead in a planned way. And that's what we do with our clients. And one of the related questions is often, how can I build more confidence? Because a false belief is that confidence comes after success, or even a limiting belief that you have to have confidence in order to proceed, when all we do in coaching is shrink the change to the next step and to look at that, because that's the sense of effectiveness and the beginning of an experience of mastery. And it's a way of not comparing our inside to someone else's outside, and of not having a limiting contingency. In other words, we may have stories about what we have to have in place in order to tap, when all we have to do is take the next step. Like, well, I really need to organize my office before I get started on this book. I need to take care of some correspondence before I can do marketing. I'm going to wait for a time without interruptions before I start my tax preparation. Now, those are all mine. The viewers will have to find their own, but there are always preconditions that we have in place that, well, then we can start. I'm going to get confidence, then I can not feel like an imposter, when all we have to focus on is the very next step and looking at the possibility, the challenge, and then after that, the next step. And all we ever have to do in life is the next best thing.
I love that. The next best thing, embrace the process, be in the moment, and decide what the next best step is.
And that's after doing what you said about being totally present, totally immersed in the flow of focus 100% on the client story, and being a facilitator or catalyst to develop that story.
And that's our job as coaches anyway, really, is to show up and to be present. And we're there for the client. The client isn't there necessarily to know our expertise, right? They're there for their own journey, and we're there to help them along that journey.
It's all about the client. It's not about us, what we've done or not done. It's about the client. Totally. I completely agree.
Well, I think all of these things are helpful, and I'm going to take them into my classes and share them with my students. And it's just helpful for me to talk through this, because I think it's something that we all struggle with from time to time. And the lesson is presence, ground yourself in the moment at hand, and then focus on the next best step and keep going. Embrace.
And I'm going to do that as soon as I clear off my desk.
Okay. Me too.
Yeah. Okay.
As soon as all the dishes
Thanks,
are out of the
that
sink.
was great. Super.
Good to see you, Dave.
The same. Absolutely. Privilege.